Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 3 of Peacock's Miss Davis, entitled A Baby with Wings, A Sad Boy with Wings, and a Great Helmet. I don't know if those are three things, as in there's a baby with wings, a sad boy with wings, and a helmet, or if it's a baby with wings and a sad boy with wings and a great helmet. I think it is the latter because as we see at the end of this episode, while Wiley is wearing a helmet, we learn that he has wings. And but I don't know who the baby is, unless that's also referring to Wiley. I don't recall seeing a baby in this episode. Anyway, this is the episode where I really started to come around on this show. Like I was already in, like because it was just weird enough and just giving me enough, and that wasn't weird and compelling to kind of like really kind of loop me in. So I was already in. But this episode is where I started to come around. Like, I was really like, okay, this was the episode where I decided I was going to cover the show do full coverage of the show. Starting with episode 5, obviously, miniature videos, explain all at the top of episode 1. You got it. So, I was getting deathly bored during this whole Excalibur Battle sequence that happens in here. And I just feel weird even saying that word. It felt way too long and uneventful. But I love how things that don't make sense in one episode end up making sense in a later one or later in that same episode, usually right away. Like the example I gave in the last video about the Queen of Hearts, how we see the Queen of Hearts has significance at the end of episode 1, and then at the start of episode 2, we learn what that is. We still don't know the significance of that number though. Was it 2564? We don't know that yet, but still, I like that, right? And by the end of the episode, I had so many interesting and deep questions about what this show is doing, how it's doing it, why it's doing it that way, how much, if any of this is even real. It's just really fucking compelling, man. So let's talk about it. So the episode opens with this like kind of like black and white, what looks like an old war movie sequence. I was watching that like, what the fuck is this? But we later learn it's from the end of the Excalibur Battle sequence that's at the end of the episode, so it ties back to that. But it doesn't really have any relevance for talking about right now. So, this episode opens after that opening sequence, which isn't long. It's only a few seconds. We go back 7 years, and Wiley and Simone are dating. He just turned 25, and he's about to inherit $712 million. He plans on donating all but $85,000 of it, and then him and Simone are going to use that $85,000 to move to a cabin in Alaska. Right as he's about to hand over the paperwork saying, I forfeit my $712 million minus $85,000, a cowboy named Bo comes in and tells Wiley, he's like, let me know if you want to hear the real shit. And Wiley's like, I want to hear the real shit. I don't know why I thought that was a funny back and forth. This whole scene was funny. It was weird and funny. But this guy Bo tells him that he was born with a bad liver, and to get him moved up the liver list, he purposely caused a bull riding accident by doping up this bull and squeezing the fuck out of its balls right before it was released. And then, like, the whole time he's telling this story, which I just really condensed into, like, 2 sentences, while he's telling this whole story, like, he brought in his own spittoon, and he placed it on the table, and randomly spits in it in the middle of the story. Like, what the fuck, man? That shit was funny, man. But Wiley's confidence is now shaken, so he wants to try to ride this Jezebel that we saw in a commercial earlier in the flashback when him and Simone are still at his house kind of practicing what he was going to say when he got to the meeting with the lawyers to talk about the inheritance money. The flashback ends with Wiley getting on the bull, about to be released, and then the flashback ends. And that's all we see. Present day, we are now in London, which is where we were going at the end of episode 2. Good shit, right? We're now in London to find the old man who answered the phone and knew the name Clara. JQ and his crew find out the guy is going to this thing called Excalibur Battle. It's at this point that I noticed that people were calling the algorithm Ms. Davis. Maybe it was happening before, I'm not sure, but I didn't notice it until episode 3, and I only noticed it because they said in the UK it's called Mom. So, like, for some reason that brought it to my attention. They might have been calling her Ms. Davis before, and I don't know, for whatever reason missed it. We also note that Simone has moved away from calling the algorithm it, and has started calling it she. Which is not good in this world of pronouns. Like, it would be preferable. Simone and Wiley are on a train, and a passenger interrupts with a message from Miss Davis. It gives her a gift for Wiley and mentions that her mom is on the train in the dining car. And I spent a long time wondering, why did she give him the gift right away? Like, it works out at the time it was given to him in the episode, later in the episode, but who gets a gift, is told to give it to another person, then spends a ton of time with that person while holding the gift, and doesn't say anything and doesn't give it to him? Weird plot shit. Like, that would have happened any time, but they needed her to not give him the gift until the moment that he gets it. So, most of the time, I would give a show shit for that. But this is the way this show kind of operates in between, like, reality and whatever the fuck you call what this thing does sometimes. The fact that it does that gives it a little more leeway to do things that don't make sense. So, hey, lesson learned. If you want me to not shit on your plot holes, make your show a little quirky, and then I'll just be like, just a feature, not a bug. What the fuck is wrong with me? Where was I? Oh, so we learned that the mother, her name's Celeste, she thinks that the dad is still alive, and she says that she thinks Simone helped him fake his death, which is interesting since, again, we know Simone saw his death, which we learned from the fake parents in the last episode. But could he have faked his death? And if he did, to what end? Like, why would you do that? And also, like, how do you do that with your daughter there? I mean, they're magicians, so... I mean, in episode 1, we saw a motherfucker get decapitated, and then there wasn't a decapitated motherfucker. So, who knows? Maybe he didn't kill himself. But, the mom's presented as the brains of the operation. So, if he did fake his death, wouldn't she have been involved somehow? Yeah, I'm really very much on the to what end. But, most importantly, as a television show, you don't throw out the idea that someone might have faked their death in order to later show that they did in fact fake their death. It like makes the fake their death reveal have no weight whatsoever. So I'm super curious why that scene was there specifically, where, not that scene, I understand why the scene is there, but the moment where the mother, Celeste, talks about the father faking his death and shit. Wondering why that's there. I am at full faith I'm gonna find out, but as of now, curious. Simone and Wiley arrive at this Excalibur battle, and we learn that it's really just a competition to see who can keep their hand on this giant fucking Excalibur sword the longest, and it's just as dumb as it sounds, and it felt dumb for most of the episode. But like I said, this show has a habit of taking something that feels inconsequential or boring or irritating, uninteresting, whatever, and making it have a lot of meaning later. But we'll get to that. They spot Clara, and Simone agrees to follow her, while Wiley follows the guy, who is, of course, participating in the Excalibur battle. So, Wiley is now forced to participate in this stupid sword-touching competition, and I thought it was an interesting decision for Simone to learn everything she learned about Clara off-screen, while we spent our time with Wiley touching the sword, I'm interested in why they made that decision. Anyway, Simone gives Wiley the gift from Miss Davis, which is a random fucking pair of British Knights who I feel like most people aren't even gonna know what the fuck British Knights are. He originally doesn't want to get anything from the algorithm, but after a number of hours that the show doesn't even feel like they need to tell us anymore, like it says something like lots of fucking hours, like I don't, it says something. It didn't say that, but something like that. He decides he's gonna put the shoes on, and a priest who had literally bumped into them on the train shows up, and he asks Wiley where he got the shoes he's wearing. Of note, the priest is played by a guy whose name I don't know, but he played Jaqen H'ghar on Game of Thrones, and then he was what was the other thing he was on recently? Fuck. Oh, Stranger Things. He was on Stranger Things, the most recent season, and the Russia scenes with Hopper. So Wiley's told that enough time touching the sword will get anyone to talk. You bet. And eventually, the fuck is wrong with me today? The old man tells him that he's in love with Clara, and this was all just to impress her. And then he tells Wiley what lake Clara is going to be at later. Off screen, Simone's already learned this information, and she's also learned that the woman's name is actually Mathilde. She goes to the lake, and Wiley stays on the sword. Pause. Simone sees a ceremony that does seem to involve the Holy Grail, the same bowl/cup that we saw from the opening sequence, and then she's confronted by Mathilde and accidentally knocks her out cold. She then returns to Wiley, and now it's storming. And she sees through other people's phones, because she ain't got one, because, I mean, that would be a good way for the algorithm to talk to her. She sees through other people's phones that Wiley has wings. And we learn that he did the expiration date thing that I talked about in the previous video, where in exchange for his life, he will get wings. And we come to understand that Wiley's decision to stay on the sword and to get wings and all of this shit is for people to know or to feel that he mattered. We learned that in the Jezebel flashback, he chickened out altogether on doing the bull ride. And he saw Simone looking at him and looking disappointed, and people calling him a coward. And he says he feels like she stopped loving him in that moment. So this motherfucker's got a lot to prove. And I love how a sequence that felt stupid and boring the entire time ends up becoming something where it's like, yes, this is stupid, it is boring, and it's dumb, and I'm doing this because I have to, because I need to fucking get a goddamn win, because I have just had a life of just fucking like fails and feeling like a coward and feeling like a loser. I love that. Simone says in this moment that wasn't actually what happened, and that she closed her eyes and prayed for him to be okay. She was then instantly teleported to the restaurant that we have seen this entire time with Jay, and this is the first time that they met, when she goes to pray for Wiley when he's getting on this horse. And she says she instantly fell in love, and we come to learn that Jay is supposedly actual fucking Jesus. And this explains a lot, actually. Explains the weirdness of how she gets her mission assignments, although, I mean, it's not like, oh, that's something Jesus would do. It just aligns with how weird that is. But it does explain why she's a nun. It explains why her response to this proposal was, yes, Jesus. And this reveal completely recontextualized how I saw everything that came before it. And I absolutely love that about this episode, even though I wasn't feeling the Excalibur Battle stuff while it was happening. But like the way they ended it made me look back at that and go, wow, I really look at that differently now. And the episode ends with Wiley getting struck by lightning. I think he says, fuck Jesus or goddamn. He says some sort of taking the Lord's name in vain thing. And he's struck by the sword is struck by lightning, and he is electrocuted after winning the competition. And then he gets kidnapped in a fake ambulance that is driven by the priest named Jaqen H'ghar from the train, who still is obsessed with where he got his shoes. So that's all I got for episode 3. I will see you guys for episode 4, and until then, peace.